here that sleeve down the intake port to match the carburetor. And look, no gasket. Well, kind of a half of a boogered up gasket, which is ripped out, half ripped out here. Nothing on the other side. No wonder it didn't run right. And even though the float bowl is drilled and you can fit a jet there, there's no corresponding hole in the body. And the fellow had this pilot jet installed here, not here. Look at that. They're all ground off. I mean, it's like they did it on a cinder block. So I got, let's see, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and the Persang. 7 broken bikes. Hey, it's Dave from Bullpen Cycles. You remember this bike from Meekum Kissimmee? And it wouldn't start. It's a 360 Persang. Non-matching numbers, 360 Persang. Model 207. Reed valve 360 and a 250 frame. And it wouldn't run. This is not the bike I bought by mistake. But I bid the wrong one. Wait, which one is this? Which one is this? I thought I just bid on that.
75 Frontera.
Oh, I got the wrong one. All right, I'll take it.
Got you a 25 on this one.
I screwed up. What, the wrong Frontera?
3,500?
Yeah.
Oh!
The mistake bike actually fired up. You remembered that. So, I think I found the problem. I think it's fixed. We're gonna find out. Then I'm gonna tell you what the problem was. So let's see if it lights. No? Back to the drawing board. These are 2 different Mark II amyl carbs, both made in Spain. That one had a jet right here, which makes sense. The corresponding body has a hole in the same place to meet that jet, and that hole is drilled and comes out on the inside there. But what's different is there'd normally be pilot jet here screwed into the body, and those holes are not drilled. So this is some sort of pilot jet for this particular carburetor. Now here's another Mark II, and it has the pilot jet where it should be. And even though the float bowl is drilled and you can fit a jet there, there's no corresponding hole in the body. And the fellow had this pilot jet installed here, not here. So basically my pilot was wide open with no jet, and the pilot jet was useless in the back where there's no passage to the body. So I think what it was doing, it was flooding out. Now obviously it's doing something else now. I'm closer, I got a rumble, but only a rumble. So I still have to go back to the drawing board. And first I thought, well, the carburetor was not put together right. It was missing the idle jet and was dumping fuel into the cylinder. Now the 207 motor came with a 40mm carburetor, which is correct. It's an Amel Mark II square-bodied carburetor. But if you look, and what threw me is the intake manifold diameter was 38mm, causing me to suspect something else. And here's what we found. First off, this is a model 112 cylinder. Yeah, it's a 360, but it's a piston port. And the piston port 112 would have had a 36mm carburetor. Later you could get a 38mm carburetor, but this is not a 207 cylinder. So it's like they built this bike from a mishmash of leftover parts. A 207 bottom end, a 112 cylinder, the 40mm carb, which never came on the 112. It was missing an idle jet, and who knows what else. So continuing on with my tour of broken bikes, this is my Bultaco Frontera 370 gold medal. You saw this, it's one of two bikes I imported from Spain. And what a rabbit hole this has become. By way of background, the gold medal is basically a Bultaco Persang, which languished unsold with the distributors. So they were sent back to Spain, or not exported, where Bultaco then painted them gold, added lights, and called them a special edition gold medal Frontera. It is a gold medal. It's $493. It would have been a $193 as a Persang. They restamped the 1 into a 4. Now here, this was originally a 4. Its numbers matching, so this is indeed a gold medal. But what a cluster this has been. So when we saw it first, it had an up pipe, which I thought was okay because a dual sport in Florida should have an up pipe so you can do water crossings. But for the up pipe, they had a really badly engineered bracket. They cut a hole in the airbox and had it hanging on with like a coat hanger in the back. It was awful. So I put the proper Persang pipe on it. Luckily I had one of these. Had to do the carburetor fine. The lights, well, there was no switch gear and the lights weren't hooked up. The tail light was missing. The rear fender was cut short. And it was just a broken wiring harness. Nothing was hooked up, so it took me some time. See, I don't have one of these to look at, and I don't have books for this because this model was never imported. I think it would have had two of these switches, one on each side. High beam, low beam, horn, on, off, kill on the other side. I put one on, simplified the wiring. But now as I'm looking at it, here's your Fonterra hub with the Speedo drive, which would normally go here, which won't fit because that's the wrong headlight. They just stuck that headlight there to make it look like it had lights. It wasn't hooked up, and it's not the right headlight. Okay, those are kind of minor things. I thought I had it where I was ready to run it, but I couldn't get the clutch to work. Well, here's why. Look at these clutch plates. Look at that. They're all ground off. I mean, it's like they did it on a cinder block. So I couldn't get the clutch to work. I couldn't get it adjusted, so I went to look at it and discovered that. So why did they do that? Were they trying to get them to stick? Well, maybe they weren't sticking because there's supposed to be a ball bearing in there, and it was missing. So, gosh, I hope this engine's put together right. But wait, it gets better. So here's my gold medal tank. I don't know if this is the original paint or not, but there's a huge crack in it. If you look right here, it's all cracked. They had some sealer in there that didn't seal. I'll have to fix that. I'm not sure quite the best way. Normally, I do flush my fiberglass tanks very lightly with acetone and use Caswell sealer, but I don't do that when they leak because that acetone will piss everywhere and eat what's left of the paint. So sometimes I try Marine JB Weld just to solidify that hole up so I can Caswell it. But I think what I'm going to do is I'm going to go across the street to the Boat Works. They're good at working with fiberglass. They'll tell me the best way to seal that up. So this Fonterra, also not really a good bike. But wait, it gets better. Here's another broken thing. I got this Harley Topper. It's a 1960 Harley Topper from the Mannheim dealer car auction. Sometimes they get bikes through there, and it didn't run, which is fine, but they stiffed me for the title. I don't know how they're allowed to do that. They did not disclose the fact that it was only on bill of sale. Now, licensed dealers in Florida, we're not allowed to sell anything without a title. Even dirt bikes, if I sell it to a Florida resident, we're supposed to get titled first if I'm selling it through a dealer. So the Mannheim, which is a big car auction, they said this had a title and it didn't. But that wasn't the problem that I'm having now. I got no spark, and I had the magneto apart. There's two coils in here. I guess you call them pickup coils. And one was melted and the other was unhooked. One is for lighting, one is for the ignition. They had both the ignition and lighting wired through one coil, and it was melted. I'm assuming the lighting coil went bad, So they put lights and ignition to the single coil, overheated it, and it melted. And I don't know where I can get new coils wound up. I think it needs to be rewound, and I don't have a good place for that yet. So there's another broken POS that I have to deal with. And then we got these over here. These aren't really the fault of the bike, except maybe that OSA. I'm gonna put an electronic ignition, like a vape system. I bought it in that OSA, and that might make it start easier and run more reliably. Here's a Matador. That's a complete bike, titled. I just have to get it going. Who knows what it's gonna take. And that is a 200 Persang. It's supposed to be a runner, but I need to check the rings. Which brings us to this. This is another brand new Cannondale, which, if I recall, is an is it X440S? 400S? They're all 440s, but the original ones they said 400. But they're all 440s, and it's the old style frame. This bike is brand new. It's still on the MSO. Look how clean it is under here. The engine, well, they had run it. You can tell the gas tank is discolored, so it had gas in it. They hadn't run it much because it was still full of assembly lube. But it was also full of magnesium sludge. Originally, these covers were magnesium, and they would disintegrate from the inside out because of the water pump on the other side. They would fail right out of the crate. So my thought here is to make fully updated, brand new Cannondale with all of the updates to the motor, updates to the mapping. We're gonna update some of the cooling system, the switch gear. I don't know if I'm ever gonna run it, but it's gonna be the bike that Cannondale should have made had they not gone out of business. So here's my old radiator. And it's toast. And this is the old style because it doesn't have the provision for the air bleeder. I don't even remember what I ordered for this thing. I got some new old stock parts. Let's see. Oh, I guess my fuel lines were missing. Here's a radiator, some hoses. The idea is if I don't have the right hoses or the right clamps on it, I'm not putting that on. There's nothing wrong with it, but I want to make this a new bike. It's only got 2 or 3 hours on it, tops, if that. So anything that water or fuel touched, we are going to replace. First, you saw my grump. This is no fault of the bike. It's just, it's tired. I hammered the pee out of it when we ran it in the Cross Florida tour. And I was just gonna freshen up the top end and re-gasket it. But I'm wondering maybe I should drop it and have the motor done. Just because it's time. Then there's this Greaves 360 Challenger, which was such a beautiful bike, I thought it would fire right up. But it had been sitting so long, the oil in the transmission turned to tar. Literally turned to tar. I had to clean it out with paint thinner. And the primary drive was shot, had to replace that. Wanted to double check the timing, but that's a Stepa ignition. I didn't have a puller for it. I've got it to sputter a couple times. Compression is low. I thought it might come back if I got it running. Well, I had to put rings in it. Look how this is. It's got studs down here and studs up there. And these are easy enough to get to. But what about the ones back there? Kind of a pain. Put rings in it. Still won't start. But that's not all of my broken bike collection. Do you remember this Moto Guzzi? Something about it just didn't seem right to me. Remember? It just felt like, well, the guy had fouled out used plugs in it. But even with plugs, it felt like something was a little off. Like maybe the sync was off. The carburetor synchronization was off. So these are the square body carburetors that were installed. And the synchronization problem was there's a clip that sets the height of the needle. The needles were set at different heights. That was probably what I was noticing. But also, look, I hate to see this. When the jets are all rounded out because people screwed them in too tight. Hey, these are brass. A, they're not gonna fall out. That's pipe thread. B, they're soft. Don't cringe them down that tight that you can't get them out. You see, those are the original atomizers. So we've replaced the jets, the accelerator pump, the atomizer, put in new float needles. But that's not all. These are V7 intake manifolds. And that is a V7, but the carburetors are from an Ambassador. The V7 would have had SS1s. These carburetors don't quite clear the engine case with the old manifolds. Those carburetors have to sit vertically. Particularly on this side, there's not enough clearance between the engine case and the carburetor unless you also change the manifolds. And that affects your float level. But wait, there's more. These are reducers. Reducers that go here, that sleeve down the intake port to match the carburetor. And look, no gasket. Well, kind of half of a boogered up gasket, which is ripped out, half ripped out here. Nothing on the other side. No wonder it didn't run right. I'm just hoping the rest of it is okay. I think it is. My plan for this bike is to then double check the timing, adjust the valves, and see how it runs then. I think it'll be okay. But you never know. So I got, let's see, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and the Persang. 7 broken bikes. I don't know what to say. I don't know what advice to give you. Don't end up like me. How's that?